Tertium Organum by Pavel D. Ouspensky. Chapter 6. Let us imagine a world of one dimension. It will be a line. Upon this line, let us imagine living beings. Upon this line, which represents the universe, for them, they will be able to move forward and backward only, and these beings will be as the points or the segments of a line. Nothing will exist for them outside their line, and they will not be aware of the line upon which they are living and moving, for there will exist only 2 points, ahead and behind, or may just be 1 point ahead. Noticing the change in states of these points, the one-dimensional being will call these changes phenomena. If we suppose the line upon which the one-dimensional being lives to be passing through the different objects of our world, then all of these objects, the one-dimensional being will perceive 1 point only. If different bodies intersect his line, the one-dimensional being will sense them only as the appearance, the more or less prolonged existence, and the disappearance of a point. This appearance, existence, and disappearance of a point will constitute a phenomenon. Phenomena, according to the character and properties of passing objects and the velocity and properties of their motions, for the one-dimensional being will be constant or variable, long or short-timed, periodically or unperiodical. But the one-dimensional being will be absolutely unable to understand or explain the constancy or variability, the duration or brevity, the periodicity or unperiodicity of the phenomena of his world, and will regard these simply as properties of such phenomena. The solids intersecting his line may be different, but for the one-dimensional being, all phenomena will be absolutely identical, just the appearance or disappearance of a point. And phenomena will differ only in duration and in greater or less periodicity. Such strange monotony and similarity of the diverse and heterogeneous phenomena of our world will be the characteristic peculiarity of the one-dimensional world. Moreover, if we assume that the one-dimensional being possesses memory, it is clear that recalling all the points seen by him as phenomena, he will refer them to time. Let me read that sentence again. Moreover, if we assume that the one-dimensional being possesses memory, it is clear that recalling all the points seen by him as phenomena, he will refer them to time. The point which was, this is the phenomena already non-existent, and the point which may appear tomorrow, this is the phenomena which does not exist yet. All of our space, except one line, will be in the category of time, i.e., something wherefrom phenomena come and into which they disappear. And the one-dimensional being will declare that the idea of time arises for him out of the observation of motion, that is to say, out of the appearance and the disappearance of points. These will be considered as temporal phenomena, beginning at the moment that they become invisible. beginning at the moment when they become visible, and ending, ceasing to exist, at the moment when they become invisible. The one-dimensional being will not be in a position to imagine that the phenomenon goes on existing somewhere, though invisibly to him, or he will imagine it as existing somewhere on his line, far ahead of him. We can imagine this one-dimensional being more vividly. Let us take an atom hovering in space, or simply a particle of dust. carried along by the air, and let us imagine that this atom or particle of dust possesses a consciousness, i.e., separates himself from the outside world and is conscious only of that which lies in the line of his motion and with which he himself comes in contact. He will then be a one-dimensional being in the full sense of the word. He can fly and move in all directions, but it will always seem to him that he is moving upon a single line. Outside of this line will be for him only a great nothingness. The whole universe will appear to him as a line. He will feel none of the turns and angles of his line, for to feel an angle it's necessary to be conscious of that which lies to the right or the left, above or below. In all other respects, such a being will be absolutely identical with the before described imaginary being living upon the imaginary line. Everything that comes in contact with, that is, everything he is conscious of, will seem to him to be emerging from time, i.e. nothing vanishing into time. I.e. from nothing vanishing into time, i.e. into nothing. This nothing will be all our world. All our world except one line will be called time and will be counted as actually non-existent. Let us consider the two-dimensional world and the being living on a plane. The universe of this being will be one great plane. Let us imagine beings on this plane, having the shapes, points, lines, and flat geometrical figures. The objects and solids of that world will have the shape of geometrical figures too. In what manner will a being living on such a plane, universe, cognize his world? First of all, we can affirm that he will not feel the plane upon which he lives. He will not do so because he will feel the objects, i.e. figures which are on his plane. He will feel the lines which limit them, and for this reason he will not feel the plane, for in that case he would not be in a position to discern the lines. The lines will differ from the plane in that they produce sensations. Therefore, they exist. The plane does not produce sensations. Therefore, it does not exist. Moving on the plane, the two-dimensional being, feeling no sensations, will declare that nothing now exists. After having encountered some figure, having sensed its lines, he will say that something appeared. But gradually, by a process of reasoning, the two-dimensional being will come to the conclusion that the figures he encounters exist on something or in something. Thereupon he may name such a plane. He will not know indeed that it is a plane. He will name it the ether. Accordingly, he will declare that the ether fills all space, but differs in its qualities from matter. By matter he will mean lines. Having come to this conclusion, the two-dimensional being will regard all processes as happening in his ether, i.e. in his space. He will not be in a position to imagine anything outside of this ether, that is, outside of his plane. If anything proceeding out of his plane comes in contact with his consciousness, he will either deny it or regard it as something subjective, the creation of his own imagination, or else he will believe that it is proceeding right on the plane in the ether, as are all other phenomena. Sensing lines only, the plane being will not sense them as we do. First of all, he will see no angle. It is extremely easy for us to verify this by experiment. If we hold before us two matches inclined one to another in a horizontal plane, then we shall see one line. To see the angle, we shall have to look from above. The two-dimensional beings cannot look from above and therefore cannot see the angle. But measuring the distance between the lines of different solids of his world, the two-dimensional being will come continually in contact with the angle, and he will regard it as a strange property of the line, which is sometimes manifest and sometimes not. That is, he will refer the angle to time. He will regard it as a temporary, evanescent phenomena, a change in the state of a solid, or as motion. It's difficult for us to understand this. It's difficult to imagine how the angle can be regarded as motion, but it must be absolutely so and cannot be otherwise. If we try to represent ourselves if we try to represent to ourselves how the plane being studies the square, then certainly we find that for the plane being, the square will be a moving body. Let us imagine that the plane being is opposite one of the angles of the square. He does not see the angle. Before him is a line, but a line possessing very curious properties. Approaching this line, the two-dimensional being observes that a strange thing is happening to the line. One point remains the same position, and the other points are withdrawing back from both sides. We repeat that the two-dimensional being has no idea of an angle. Apparently, the line remains the same as it was, yet something is happening to it without a doubt. The plane being will say that the line is moving, but so rapidly as to be imperceptible to sight. If the plane being goes away from the angle and follows along the side of the square, then the side will become immobile. When he comes to the angle, he will notice the motion again. After going around the square several times, he will establish the fact of regular periodical motions of the line. Quite probably in his mind of the plane being the square quite probably in the mind of the plane being, the square will assume the form of a body possessing the property of periodical motions, invisible to the eye but producing definite physical effects, or it will remain there as a perception of periodical moments of rest and motion in one complex line, and still more probably it will seem to be a rotating body. Quite possibly the plane being will regard the angle as his own subjective perception and will doubt whether any objective reality corresponds to this subjective perception. Nevertheless, he will reflect that if there is action yielding to measurement, so must there be the cause of it, consisting in the change of the state of the line, i.e., in motion. The lines visible to the plane being he may call matter, and the angles motion. That is, he may call the broken line with an angle moving matter. And truly to him such a line, by reason of its properties, will be quite analogous to matter in motion. If a cube were to rest upon the plane upon which the plane being lives, then this cube will not exist for the two-dimensional being, but only the square face of the cube in contact with the plane will exist for him as a line with periodical motions. Correspondingly, all other solids lying outside the plane, in contact with it or passing through it, will not exist for the plane being. The planes of contact or cross-sections of these bodies will alone be sensed. But if these planes or sections move or change, then the two-dimensional being will think, indeed, that the cause of the change or motion is in the bodies themselves, i.e., right there on his plane. As has been said, the two-dimensional being will regard the straight lines only as immobile matter. Irregular lines and curves will seem to him as moving. So far as really moving lines are concerned, that is, lines limiting the cross-sections or planes of contact passing through or moving along the plane, these will be, for the two-dimensional being, something inconceivable and incommensurable. It will be as though there were in them the presence of something independent, depending upon itself only, animated. This effect will proceed from two causes. He can measure the immobile angles and curves, the properties of which the two-dimensional being calls motion, for the reason that they are immobile. Moving figures, on the contrary, he cannot measure, because the changes in them will be out of his control. These changes will depend upon the properties of the whole body and its motion, and of that of the whole body, and the two-dimensional being will only know one side or section. Not perceiving the existence of this body and contemplating the motion pertaining to the sides and sections, he will probably regard them as living beings. He will affirm that there is something in them which differentiates them from other bodies, vital energy, or even soul, that sometimes will be regarded as inconceivable and really will be inconceivable to the two-dimensional being, because to him it is the result of an incomprehensible motion of inconceivable solids. If we imagine an immobile circle upon the plane, then for the two-dimensional being it will appear as a moving line with some very strange and to him inconceivable motions. The two-dimensional being will never see that motion. Perhaps he will call such a motion molecular motion, i.e., the movement of minutest invisible particles of matter. Moreover, a circle rotating around an axis passing through its center for the two-dimensional being will differ in some inconceivable way from the immobile will differ in some inconceivable way from the immobile circle. Both will appear to be moving, but moving differently. For the two-dimensional being, a circle or a square rotating around its center on account of its double motion will be an inexplicable and incommensurable phenomena, like a phenomena of life for a modern physicist. Therefore, for a two-dimensional being, a straight line will be a mobile matter, a broken or curved line, matter in motion, and a moving line, living matter. The center of a circle or a square will be inaccessible to the plane being, just as the center of a sphere or a cube made of solid matter is inaccessible to us. And for the two-dimensional being, even the idea of a center will be incomprehensible, since he possesses no idea of a center. Having no idea of a phenomena proceeding outside of the plane, that is, outside of his space, the plane being will think of all phenomena as proceeding on his plane, as has been stated, and all phenomena which he regards as proceeding on his plane he will consider as being in causal interdependence one with another. That is, he will think that one phenomena is the result of another, which has happened right there, and the cause of a third, which will happen right on the same plane. If a multicolored cube passes through the plane being will perceive the entire cube and its motion as a change in color of lines lying in the plane. Thus, if a blue line replaces a red one, then the plane being will regard the red line as a past event. He will not be in a position to realize that the idea that the red line is still existing somewhere. He will say that the line is single, but that it becomes blue as a consequence of certain causes of a physical character. If the line moves backward so that the red line appears again after the blue one, then for the two-dimensional being, this will constitute a new phenomenon. He will say that the line became red again. For the being living on a plane, everything above and below, if the plane be horizontal, and on the right or left, if the plane be vertical, it will be existing in time, in the past and in the future. That which in reality is located outside the plane will be regarded as non-existent, either as that which has already passed, i.e. something which has disappeared, ceased to be, will never return, or as in the future, i.e. as not existent, not manifested, as a thing in potentiality.